community, they don't really extend any grace to women.
Yeah.
They will bash women for being single moms. They will bash women for having an OnlyFans.
I've ever bashed anyone for having OnlyFans. Maybe she's not talking about me. I think probably like maybe Myron and Fresh have bashed women for having OnlyFans. I think Myron and Fresh might have like, maybe that's the key, but I don't think myself or my cast. And by the way, this is Jamie Lynn. Jamie Lynn has her new podcast. I'm buffing her out right here. She does this out of Sticky Paws, which is the same studio that we do Access Vegas in, right? She was on the very first show of Access Vegas.
And they have a lot of empathy for, men that are incels. They have.
Who's an incel? I love that. I love how it's like this just blanket statements, right? What's an incel? Can you tell me? Because I don't know. I would love to have your definition.
Have a lot of empathy for that, but then they don't have empathy for intimate partner violence. That's something that I never hear them talk about on the show. And that's a real thing. Like that's a huge thing. Do you know that that's the second highest way that women die? The first is heart disease.
You know what's funny is this is exactly the same line that I got from Imran Ahmed over a year ago on the Dr. Phil show. Do you know the number one way that women die? Yeah, heart disease. Well, what's number two? Men. Do you know what the number one way men die? Other men. If we're going to get into sort of like the victim Olympics, if we're going to get into like who has it rougher, men die violent deaths way, way more than women do. So, but I'm sure there are battered women's shelters. We talk about this all the time on The View and God knows wherever else. Just because those red pill guys aren't talking about it doesn't mean that it's not important to them. It's that we talk about, on the job deaths, military deaths, violent crime deaths, being shot on the streets of Detroit or Chicago, Chirac. Why do those guys don't talk about it? Yeah, well, we have. But not as often as we talk about like guys getting, zeroed out in one way or another. We definitely talk about male suicide. God knows I've made a point to do that. I've got a full program coming up for that with Joe Moran. But because we didn't talk about the little ladies, we must have something. We must be sexist. We must be misogynists. God damn, you're going to make me do it, aren't you?
Misogyny.
You're going to make us be misogyny because we didn't address that? Well, that's because these shows aren't about you. They're not about domestic partner violence. I'm not saying it's not an important fucking aspect of life and relationships. Well, so what would you like us to do? Would you like us to say, you know what? I'm going to dedicate an entire show to guys. I'll just do it right now. Guys, don't beat your chicks. How's that? Don't be an asshat. Don't be a jerk. Don't be a fuckwit. Don't beat your girl. There, happy? Because that's really what else can you say? Well, would you like the statistics? I'll give you the statistics. Okay, fine. You want some advice? Don't beat your girlfriend. Don't beat your wife. Don't kick your dog. Don't beat your kids. Got it? Are we good? Good. Let's keep going.
The second highest is intimate partner violence. And that's a woman dying, not a man dying. That's a woman dying.
Yeah, because men are busy dying, let's see, and on the job, in the military, on the streets of Chicago, name it, you name it. Men die in droves. You want to talk about mortality rates? Men got you beat. Trust me on that one.
Yeah.
And that's a real, like, that's a, like, where is the empathy for, like, you want to talk about gender roles.
The empathy is with other guys. That's where the empathy is. And by the way, you don't know what empathy is. There's a difference, but well, maybe she does. There's a difference between empathy and sympathy. There's actually a dictionary definition that is different. Sympathy, I can be sympathetic for you. If you break your arm, for example, like Ned broke his arm. I'm not a greyhound and I've never broken my arm. So I can be sympathetic with Ned breaking his arm. I can't be empathetic because A, I'm not a greyhound, and B, I've never broken my arm. I've broken my toe. I've had a broken foot before, but I've never broken an arm. And so I can't empathize with that because empathy means you share a common experience. You can empathize with somebody because the same shit has happened to you. You can sympathize with somebody, but that sympathy comes from being a caring, good, well-rounded, and emotionally stable individual. Doesn't necessarily mean that you empathize with that person. So let's get our definition straight. And I think she needs to really kind of remember this, because she's supposed to be a psychologist too, I guess. I'm not really sure. Like, everybody's a psychologist. Now I got Sadia, and now I got this girl. I'm happy to go on, happy to talk with you about this anytime you want, because again, it's just confident ignorance. They don't really empathize. Sympathize for sure. We can't possibly empathize because we're not chicks.
You want to talk about, modern dating. Why aren't you talking about intimate partner violence?
Okay, like I said, don't beat your girlfriend. There you go. Talked about it. What do you want? Like, what more? Do you want a show dedicated to it? Because there's plenty of other shows that are dedicated to that. The reason why we have a problem with this is because it's not taking into account poor women. Women are wonderful. There is actually a psychological predisposition that is called actually the women are wonderful phenomenon, meaning that we take women more seriously. We take their statistics more seriously. We take them. I could go look at. I can actually, let me go grab it real quick. I can just read this to you. Women are wonderful. Effect. The women are wonderful effect. That's what it's called. Oh, well, gosh, Google's really nice about this. Okay, the phrase was coined by Alice Eagley and Antonio Moldinici in 1994 after finding that both male and female participants tend to assign positive traits to women, with female participants showing far more pronounced bias. Positive traits were assigned to men by participants of both genders, but to a far lesser degree. This is the women are wonderful effect. I can go read it to you from Wikipedia if you'd like. The women are wonderful effect is the phenomenon found in psychology and sociological research. She should know this, right? Which suggests that people associate more positive attributes with women when compared to men. This bias reflects an emotional bias towards women as a general case. Okay, I already read the other part of that. The term was coined by researchers Alice Eagley and Antonio Mladinic, maybe that's it, in 1994 paper where they had questioned the widely held view that there was prejudice against women. They observed that much of the research had been inconclusive in showing a bias. They had found a positive bias towards women in their 1989 and 1991 studies, which involved questionnaires given to students in the United States. In 1989, 203 psychology students at Purdue were given a questionnaire in groups of 20 and asked, okay, remember, this is 1989, this is 203, in groups of 20 and asked to assess subjects of both genders, which showed a more favorable attitude towards women and female stereotypes. In 1991, 324 psychology students at Purdue were given a questionnaire in groups of 20 and asked to assess subjects of both genders. They evaluated the social categories of men and women relating to the traits and expectations of each gender through interviews, emotion associations, and free responses. Women were rated higher in attitudes and beliefs, but not emotions. There you go. Women are wonderful. You didn't even know that. You can learn. See, pod class. Women are wonderful effect. It's a psychological effect. So when I'm relating something, or somebody in the red pill is relating something, and especially if it's like about men, like, oh, these guys bash single mothers. I don't think anybody has really bashed single mothers. We tell men to avoid single mothers. In fact, I don't even tell you guys to avoid single mothers. I say, you know what? If you want to date them, don't marry them. But, if that's your shtick, if that's your thing, go for it, right? But understand the dynamic and what leads up to sort of the mentality of the single mothers, and understand that there's going to be a hesitancy for most guys to get involved with the single mother. That's what we talk about. And if we talk about that, it sounds like we're bashing women. Because the language of empiricism always sounds like hate bashing to the language of emotionalism. So if I'm not like 100% sweet on saying, oh, we should all just, I know they've got it so rough and, partner violence and yada, 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 then if I don't balance it out If I don't say, hey, men, here's what you ought to do. Hey, men, I don't say ought to do, but here, men, here's the dynamic. Just me explaining that there's a sexual hesitancy for guys to want to get involved with single mothers. That sounds like bashing, because I didn't give some opposite. It was like a yin yang, right? I only gave the yin. I didn't give the yang. Well, nobody gives two flying fucks about the yin yang thing when we say men are dogs, men are pigs, men are only motivated by sex, men are only whatever. No one says, well, yeah, well, women are too. No one. And if they do, it's like through an effort of will. It's because it's not a default. It's always a default to say, well, if we're going to say something about female nature, then we also better say something about men's nature. And I constantly see this on Twitter. Hell, even just my discussions. I've been on podcasts where women will go, well, as a woman, okay, but we weren't talking about women. We were talking about men right now. But no buts. That end of conversation. This conversation right here, if you want to start another thread, we can talk about that. No problem. Well, how come you guys don't talk about women things when you talk about men things? Because we're talking about men things. That's why. Can we just do that? No, apparently we can't, because women are wonderful. And you better say something nice about women if you're going to say something that's unflattering about them as well. Or if you're going to say something unflattering about women, you also have to say something unflattering about men. That's just polite conversation, because we live in a gynocentric social order. And if you don't do that, it's just bad form. End of story. But again, this comes from a place of ignorance. She doesn't know what the red pill really talks about. She doesn't understand, the context in which you talk about single mothers. Well, we should talk about domestic intimate partner violence. Okay, we can dedicate a whole show to that. But that's not what the topic was when we were talking about, single moms. Why? Why do we have to have the yin and the yang? We can't just have the yin, because we only have the yin with the guys. We don't have the yin and the yang. We don't have the, men are dogs, but women are kind of dogs too. Nobody says that. No one says that. And they don't feel the necessity to balance it out when it comes to, something unflattering about guys. And there's lots of unflattering things to say about guys. But no one tries to balance it out with like, but women are bitches too. Nobody says that. Women are wonderful.